In the music industry, being at the top is an amazing feeling. However, that position also means that there's only one way to go from there: down. Just ask these musicians, whose careers were ruined by everything from criminal scandals to wardrobe malfunctions to lip-sync disasters. Jerry Lee Lewis. In 1958, rock and roll sensation Jerry Lee Lewis embarked on a UK tour with his secret bride, Myra Gale Lewis, whose true age of 13, and status as his cousin, he concealed from the public. The scandal erupted when a Daily Mail reporter, Paul Tanfield, inquired about her age during a press event. Lewis falsely claimed she was 15, but the truth soon emerged, triggering outrage. British audiences boycotted his shows, heckling him off stage and forcing concert cancellations. His luxury hotel evicted him, and he fled back to the US, where radio stations and TV networks blacklisted him. Though he retained his recording contract, his career in the mainstream collapsed, with airplay and performance bookings drying up. Despite releasing singles for years, Lewis never fully recovered from the scandal, though his legacy as a pioneering pianist endured in niche circles. Alan Freed. Alan Freed, a pioneering DJ and songwriter, may be less known today, but his impact on music history is undeniable. He is celebrated for coining the term rock and roll, organizing the world's first rock concert, and shaping post-war American music as a tastemaker from 1952 to 1957. Yet his career unraveled dramatically in 1957. At the height of his influence, Freed hosted Big Beat, a nationally syndicated ABC program that introduced rock and roll to millions. But one evening, a single moment of defiance, showing a black performer dancing with a white woman, provoked outrage in racially segregated 1950s America. The network abruptly canceled Big Beat, a decision that devastated Freed, whose health and marriage were already crumbling. The timing could not have been worse. 2 years later, in 1959, the FBI investigated Freed for his role in the payola scandal, exposing how he accepted bribes to play specific records. The scandal, coupled with lingering backlash from the interracial dance controversy, destroyed his credibility. Radio stations dropped his shows, and his once lucrative career vanished. By 1965, Freed, a man who once reigned over rock and roll, died broke and addicted to alcohol. Despite his tragic fall, his legacy as a visionary who championed black artists and popularized rock and roll endures, a stark contrast to the forces that ultimately toppled him. Ashlee Simpson. Ashlee Simpson's career took a nosedive during her 2004 Saturday Night Live appearance, when a technical mishap exposed her lip-syncing. As her band accidentally replayed the backing track from her earlier performance, viewers quickly realized she was miming to pre-recorded vocals. While lip-syncing isn't uncommon in pop music, fans and critics alike view it as a betrayal of authenticity, and Simpson faced swift backlash. According to People, she was relentlessly criticized for what many saw as a brazen act of deception, with former fans and media outlets alike accusing her of lacking integrity. When she later claimed a severe case of acid reflux forced her to rely on the recording, public opinion only turned out to be more hostile. Viewers felt she was making excuses rather than owning her mistake. The fallout was immediate and lasting. The 2 albums she released after the SNL debacle failed to match the commercial success of her debut, and she hasn't charted a top 10 hit since. Though Simpson's SNL fiasco became a cultural reference point, overshadowing her musical achievements, she can at least take solace in knowing she isn't the only artist to stumble on that iconic stage. Sinéad O'Connor. In 1992, Sinéad O'Connor became the first artist to experience a career-altering fallout from a Saturday Night Live appearance when she ended her performance of Bob Marley's War by shredding a photograph of Pope John Paul II. Her act was a protest against the Catholic Church's systemic abuse of children, a scandal largely confined to Ireland at the time and unknown to most Americans, who were 25% Catholic. Though her intent was to expose institutional hypocrisy, the gesture ignited immediate backlash. 2 weeks later, she was booed off stage at Bob Dylan's 30th anniversary concert, and soon after she announced her retirement, though she later returned to music. O'Connor's career never fully recovered. Her albums underperformed, and she became a polarizing figure. Years later, she reflected on the sacrifice. I risked everything, my career, my life, to speak out. I could have been a billionaire if I'd stayed silent. While her protest now seems prescient amid global awareness of the church's abuses, it remains a defining moment of artistic defiance that cost her public favor. Justin Timberlake. During Super Bowl 38's 2004 halftime show, Justin Timberlake tore off part of Janet Jackson's outfit, exposing her breast to an audience of 100 million. Both artists claimed the reveal was partially planned. Timberlake intended to expose red lace beneath her bustier, but accidentally removed the entire garment. The incident, dubbed Nipplegate, triggered a media frenzy. The FCC received nearly 540,000 complaints and attempted to fine CBS $550,000. However, the backlash disproportionately targeted Jackson. Viacom, which owns MTV, CBS, and VH1, blacklisted her music across its networks, and other media outlets followed suit, effectively silencing her songs. To add insult, she was barred from the Grammys that year. Timberlake, meanwhile, faced no such consequences. He remained a fixture on MTV and was invited to the Grammys. Though he later apologized, the incident cemented Jackson's status as a cultural pariah, while Timberlake's career thrived. The double standard highlighted systemic biases in how the entertainment industry treats male and female artists, with Jackson's legacy forever tied to a moment she didn't fully control. Monkees. The Monkees, a band assembled for a TV show, faced criticism for being manufactured, but thrived by embracing their origins. Milli Vanilli, however, became a cautionary tale of deception. Frontmen Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan achieved fame through lip-syncing, not just live, but in the studio too. Their voices were entirely provided by session singers Charles Shaw and Brad Howell, who were hidden behind a non-disclosure agreement. Producer Frank Farian, who masterminded the group, deemed the real vocalists unmarketable and cast Pilatus and Morvan as models turned pop stars. Their 1989 Grammy for Best New Artist seemed to validate their success, until the truth unraveled. During a 1990 MTV performance, their backing track malfunctioned, repeating the lyrics, "Girl, you know it's true," on loop. The moment sparked media scrutiny, leading to revelations that Pilatus and Morvan had never sung a note. The Grammy was revoked, marking the first time the award was rescinded for fraud. The fallout was swift. Their album Girl, You Know It's True was pulled from shelves, and their label dropped them. The scandal exposed the dark side of the music industry's obsession with image over talent, leaving Milli Vanilli as a punchline. While the real singers briefly emerged to claim credit, their careers never took off. Pilatus later died of an overdose in 1998, and Morvan faded into obscurity. Milli Vanilli's story remains a stark reminder of how manufactured fame can collapse under its own weight. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson's 2005 trial for allegedly molesting 15-year-old Gavin Arvizo became a media frenzy dubbed the trial of the century. Despite his acquittal on all charges, the case left an indelible stain on his legacy, fueling debates about whether he was a misunderstood eccentric or a predator. Jackson's eccentricities, inviting children to sleep over at Neverland Ranch, sharing beds with minors, and defending such behavior as innocent in the 2003 documentary Living with Michael Jackson, became Exhibit A for critics. The film, in which he mused about pure love with children, prompted a police raid on Neverland, sparking the trial that consumed tabloids for months. Though acquitted, public opinion remained divided, with many viewing the verdict as a technicality rather than exoneration. The trial's aftermath was devastating. Jackson's career stagnated. Concert cancellations, erratic public appearances, and mounting debt plagued him. His dependence on prescription drugs, including the anesthetic propofol, spiraled into a lethal addiction. Administered by a physician to treat chronic insomnia, propofol left him sleep-deprived and unable to rehearse for his 2009 comeback tour. This is it. On June 25, 2009, an overdose of the drug killed him at 50, turning his final months into a tragedy of enablers and medical malpractice. Yet the controversy didn't end with his death. The 2019 documentary Leaving Neverland reignited debates with graphic accounts from alleged victims, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, who described grooming, abuse, and manipulation. Jackson's estate vehemently denied the claims, calling the film tabloid character assassination, but its impact was undeniable. Radio stations dropped his music, corporations severed ties, and museums removed his artifacts. The quote, "I was really into jewelry, and he would reward me with jewelry for doing special acts for him," from Leaving Neverland, epitomized the film's power to reshape perceptions. George Michael, the iconic singer-songwriter and heartthrob of the 1980s, became a symbol of fame's complexities after his 1998 arrest for engaging in a lewd act in a Beverly Hills public restroom. The incident, which exposed his sexuality to the world, marked a turning point. Rather than retreating from the spotlight, Michael embraced the moment, transforming it into an act of defiance. He granted candid interviews, notably on Oprah, where he declared, "I'm a gay man," finally addressing rumors he had long alluded to in lyrics like "Freedom." 90 and outside. Prior to the arrest, his queerness was an open secret, hinted at in cryptic songwriting, but never publicly acknowledged. The scandal, however, came at a cost. In an era when homophobia still permeated mainstream culture, Michael's career in the U.S. suffered. Radio stations shied away from his music, and his 2004 album Patience underperformed. Yet globally, he remained a powerhouse, selling millions and winning a 2006 Brit Award for Outstanding Contribution to Music. His openness resonated deeply with LGBTQ+ fans who saw him as a trailblazer. In 2011, he told The Guardian, "I wanted to be the first gay superstar. I wanted to break that down for the next person." Michael's legacy endures as a duality, a commercial giant whose artistry transcended eras, yet a man whose personal struggles, battles with addiction, legal troubles, and HIV diagnosis humanized him. His 2016 death at 53 sparked global tributes, highlighting his dual impact as a musical innovator and LGBTQ+ icon. While his U.S. career never fully rebounded, his influence on pop culture is undeniable. He paved the way for artists like Elton John, Sam Smith, and Lil Nas X, proving that authenticity, even at great personal risk, could inspire generations. Today, he is remembered not just for hits like Careless Whisper, but for his courage in a time when silence was the norm. Chuck Berry. In 1990, rock and roll pioneer Chuck Berry faced a shocking legal scandal that tarnished his legacy. Police raided his Missouri home and discovered an arsenal of weapons, pornographic videotapes, marijuana, hashish, and $130,000 in cash. Months later, a class-action lawsuit emerged, alleging Berry had installed hidden cameras in the bathrooms of his home and a restaurant he owned, secretly filming women, some underage, as they undressed or used the facilities. Though the charges were dismissed due to lack of evidence, the scandal fueled public outrage. Prosecutors initially charged him with drug possession and child abuse, but the latter was dropped. Berry pleaded guilty to drug charges, receiving 2 years of unsupervised probation and a $5,000 fine for a drug rehab program. However, the legal battle cost him $1.2 million in fees, draining his resources. Despite escaping severe punishment, the incident cast a long shadow. Berry, already infamous for a 1977 tax evasion conviction, faced renewed scrutiny. While his career wasn't entirely derailed, he continued touring into his 80s. Many fans and venues grew uncomfortable associating with him. Concerts drew smaller crowds, and some promoters canceled bookings over ethical concerns. The lawsuit, though unresolved, left a stain on his image, perpetuating rumors of predatory behavior. Berry's defenders noted his contributions to music history, but critics argued his art could no longer be separated from his actions. In interviews, he dismissed the allegations as lies, yet the financial and reputational damage lingered. By the time of his death in 2017, the scandal remained a footnote in his obituaries, a reminder that even legends can fall from grace. Though he never faced prison again, the 1990 case underscored how fame and infamy can coexist, leaving a complicated legacy for future generations to reconcile. CeeLo Green. In 2014, CeeLo Green's career took a nosedive after he faced allegations of drugging and assaulting an unconscious woman. Though he was acquitted of sexual assault, he pleaded no contest to furnishing ecstasy and received 3 years probation and community service. The scandal was compounded by Green's tone-deaf response. He took to Twitter to proclaim his innocence, posting bizarre statements like, "People who have really been raped remember," and arguing that consent was impossible if both parties were unconscious. These remarks fueled public outrage, painting him as insensitive and evasive. Despite escaping more severe charges, his reputation never recovered. His longtime label, Atlantic Records, dropped him, and his TV projects, like his role as a voice coach, ended abruptly. While he avoided legal ruin, his career stagnated. His most notable post-scandal appearances included a 2017 performance at the World Aquatics Championship opening ceremony in Budapest and voice work on the children's show Teen Titans Go. A far cry from his Grammy-winning success with The Voice and hits like Forget You. The incident underscored how a single controversy can overshadow decades of work, turning a once ubiquitous star into a marginal figure in pop culture. Though he occasionally resurfaces, the 2014 scandal remains a defining albatross around his legacy. R. Kelly. In 2019, a moment came that changed everything for R. Kelly. A new documentary called Surviving R. Kelly aired on television and online. In that film, many people shared their painful stories about the singer. For the first time, millions of viewers saw the dark side of R. Kelly's private life. It was a moment when all his secrets were laid bare. The documentary showed disturbing details of abuse and exploitation. Suddenly, fans in the music industry could not ignore the allegations. Radio stations began to pull his songs, and major companies distanced themselves from him. Social media exploded with anger, and protests were held. This moment of exposure meant that years of controversy could no longer be hidden. The public and industry lost trust in him immediately. Concerts were canceled, his shows were dropped, and his sponsors pulled out. In one fell swoop, the image of R. Kelly, once a celebrated R&B artist, became forever tainted by his actions. This single moment, when the truth was widely seen and heard, marked the end of his career in mainstream music. The fallout was so severe that it seems impossible to forget the impact of that day. Syd Barrett. In the late 1960s, Syd Barrett, the founding member of Pink Floyd, experienced one moment that would change his life forever. During a live performance, his behavior on stage became very erratic. One evening, as Pink Floyd was on tour, Syd began acting in a strange way. He talked in riddles and seemed completely disconnected from the music in the audience. His unusual behavior shocked both the band and the fans. It was a moment when the world saw that something was very wrong with the young musician. His actions on stage were not just a one-time mistake. They were a clear sign that his mental health was failing and that the drugs he had been taking were having a terrible effect on him. After that performance, the band and those close to him realized that Syd could no longer perform the way he used to. Soon after, he was quietly asked to leave Pink Floyd. This one performance, where his talent and promise were overtaken by confusion and erratic actions, marked the end of his public music career. Fans remembered that night as the moment when Syd Barrett's genius was overshadowed by his struggles, and he slowly faded away from the bright lights of the music scene. Amy Winehouse. In 2007, Amy Winehouse reached a point where one public moment seemed to signal the start of her tragic decline. During a live television interview, viewers saw a side of her that was hard to ignore. Winehouse, known for her soulful voice and personal struggles, appeared unsteady and confused. On that day, her erratic behavior was shown live to millions. Instead of the confident star many had come to love, she looked vulnerable and lost. The interview exposed how deep her problems had become. Problems with drugs, alcohol, and personal relationships. This moment was not planned, but became a turning point in the eyes of the public. Critics and fans alike started to worry that the real Amy Winehouse was slipping away. In the days following the broadcast, her record sales began to drop, and fewer invitations for live performances came her way. The media picked up on this change, and soon every small misstep was magnified. That single televised moment made it clear that her personal demons were taking over. It was as if the spotlight, which once shone on her unique talent, now revealed her vulnerability. The image of Amy Winehouse on that day is remembered as the moment when the music industry and the public realized that her career was on a dangerous downward spiral. Layne Staley. Layne Staley, the lead singer of Alice in Chains, had one moment that marked the beginning of his tragic downfall. During a live concert in the mid-1990s, Layne's voice was barely there, and he seemed unable to connect with the audience. That night, as he tried to sing his heart out, his performance was marred by his obvious struggle with drug addiction. Fans who had once cheered for his powerful vocals watched in confusion and sorrow as he faltered on stage. This was not just a one-off bad night. It was a clear sign that his personal battles were affecting his art. In that moment, everyone present could see that the Layne Staley they knew was changing. His energy was gone, and his once commanding presence was replaced by a sense of deep exhaustion. The incident spread quickly by word of mouth and through media reports. Concert promoters and record companies began to worry that his condition would hurt the band's reputation. Soon, Alice in Chains found it difficult to schedule shows, and fans started to worry about his well-being. That one performance became the symbol of a larger problem, a problem that would eventually lead to his complete withdrawal from the public eye and, sadly, his untimely death. It was a night that revealed the harsh truth. A single failed performance can be a turning point when personal demons are in control. Scott Weiland. Scott Weiland, known for his work with Stone Temple Pilots and Velvet Revolver, had one moment on stage that showed the world his self-destructive path. During a live television performance in the late 1990s, Weiland appeared visibly intoxicated. Instead of the smooth, captivating performance fans expected, he slurred his words, missed lyrics, and seemed lost in his own world. The moment was shocking and clear. Scott was not in control of his talent. Fans, who once admired his dynamic stage presence, were left confused and disappointed. The performance was widely reported in the media, and suddenly industry insiders began to question his reliability. Concert promoters started to cancel shows, and record labels became hesitant to invest in a star who could not deliver a consistent performance. That single disastrous night was a turning point. It was a wake-up call that showed the harsh reality of a life filled with substance abuse and poor decision-making. The media replayed clips of that night over and over, and the image of a once great frontman was forever marred by that performance. It became a symbol of how a series of bad choices can lead to a single moment that causes irreparable damage to a career. For Scott Weiland, that night was the beginning of a long and difficult decline. Marilyn Manson. For Marilyn Manson, a key moment came when disturbing allegations surfaced during a live interview in the early 2000s. On that day, a popular magazine aired an interview that was meant to show a different side of the shock rock star. However, as the interview went on, serious accusations of abusive behavior and misconduct began to emerge. The questions were direct, and Manson's responses only deepened the concern. In that moment, the media and fans saw a side of him that had long been whispered about, but never fully revealed. It was as if the carefully constructed persona of a controversial artist shattered before the eyes of the public. Social media exploded with discussions and outrage. Major festivals and venues began to drop him from their lineups. Sponsors quickly withdrew their support, and music channels removed his videos from rotation. The industry, which once celebrated his edgy style and artistic freedom, suddenly turned its back on him. That single interview marked a turning point. It was the moment when the weight of the allegations became too heavy to ignore. For Marilyn Manson, this event led to an almost immediate loss of industry support and public trust. It was a day that signaled a dramatic change, a day when the balance tipped against him, leaving his career to suffer the fallout from those revelations. Tekashi 6999. In 2018, Tekashi 69999 reached a moment that would forever change his career. On that day, he was arrested by federal agents on serious charges. The arrest was broadcast widely on social media and news outlets, and it showed the young rapper in handcuffs with police surrounding him. This was not just any arrest. It was a public display of his legal troubles and a clear signal that his wild behavior had caught up with him. The incident was a turning point because it exposed the dangerous side of his life. As soon as the images of his arrest spread, many music labels and industry insiders began to distance themselves. Fans who had once cheered his bold style and outlandish social media presence now saw him as a symbol of lawlessness and risk. Major streaming services started to remove his music from curated playlists, and sponsors quickly pulled out. The public reaction was swift and severe, and the arrest became a moment of reckoning. It was the day when Tekashi 6699's reputation was forever tarnished by his criminal actions. Even though he had built a following on shock value, that single moment made it clear that his actions would have long-lasting consequences. The industry's support vanished, and the path forward for his career became nearly impossible. Chris Brown. In 2009, one single shocking moment changed the public image of Chris Brown forever. During an incident that would soon dominate headlines, Chris Brown was involved in an assault on his then-girlfriend, the famous singer Rihanna. That night, the act of violence was captured in reports and leaked to the media. For many, this was the first time they saw the dark side of the popular singer. The incident sent shockwaves through the music industry and the public. Fans who had once admired his dance moves and catchy songs were now confronted with a violent act that they could not ignore. The media replayed every detail, and social media exploded with outrage. Concerts were canceled, and sponsors began to distance themselves. Radio stations, which had once played his hits nonstop, stopped giving him airtime. The moment of that assault became the tipping point. It was a clear signal that his personal life and actions were in conflict with the image of a role model. The public opinion shifted immediately. No longer could people separate the art from the artist, and the damage to his career was swift and severe. That one moment on that fateful night marked the beginning of a long and difficult struggle for Chris Brown to rebuild his reputation. Bobby Brown. Bobby Brown's fall from grace was marked by one particularly explosive moment that shocked the public and the music industry. In the early 1990s, during a live televised interview, Brown's temper and erratic behavior became painfully clear. He lashed out at the host and made controversial comments that shocked viewers. The interview was filled with angry outbursts, drunken ramblings, and unfiltered language. This was the moment when the smooth, charming image of Bobby Brown, once adored for his energetic performances and hits, began to crumble. Fans who had once loved his music were now confronted with the reality of his personal demons. The media wasted no time in replaying the interview, and soon every major news outlet was discussing his behavior. Record labels and sponsors quickly became wary, and live performance offers dwindled. That single televised appearance was a wake-up call to everyone that Bobby Brown's problems were not hidden behind a glamorous facade. They were out in the open for the world to see. The incident marked a turning point, as the industry no longer wished to be associated with his unpredictable behavior. From that moment on, his career began to suffer a steady decline, and he was never able to fully recover the magic of his early success. Ian Watkins. For Ian Watkins, the moment that brought his career crashing down came suddenly and with brutal clarity. During an investigation into allegations that had been whispered for some time, police raided the premises where he lived and worked. The details that emerged from that raid shocked everyone. It was revealed that Watkins had committed unspeakable crimes, and the evidence was overwhelming. That single police raid was the moment when the truth could no longer be hidden. The media broadcast the story widely, and soon every news outlet was covering the scandal. Fans who had once supported his band were horrified to learn the full extent of his actions. The music industry reacted immediately. Concerts were canceled, his record label terminated all contracts, and every radio station and television channel dropped his music. The moment the police made the arrest, Watkins' public image was destroyed beyond repair. The fallout was swift and severe, with industry partners and sponsors refusing to be associated with him in any way. For many, that day became synonymous with betrayal and shock. It was a moment when the trust and admiration of fans turned to revulsion and disbelief. Ian Watkins' career ended in that single devastating moment, leaving behind a legacy defined solely by his crimes, rather than any musical talent he once had.